some of the stuff I've found is eye-opening. You think, why has anyone put this there? A defense company, a major defense company, I'm not going to say who, put their whole supplier list up. That was 2,000 names, with names, addresses, and not only just the names and addresses and the contact people for those suppliers, but even how much each supplier spent with the company, or how much was, what the value of each transaction with that company was, not just for 1 year, but for a 3 or 4 year period. That was made available on the web. The company doesn't know it was made available. It was an accident. But if you know how to search, that's the sort of stuff that you can find. Sometimes even crazier stuff, like open intranet sites that aren't protected. If the webmaster finds that, it'll normally be closed. But you've got a small window sometimes where you'll find this sort of information. So that's the sort of reasons why secondary search can be important and why it should be done. And part of the skill is knowing how to find some of that stuff. And that's what I'm going to be talking about this morning, just touching on some of the things that you can look for, what you might want to look for. So it's, what is advanced search? What are some of the other search engines? So what are the differences? So what is search engine advanced search? And most people, when they look at search, they're just going to be putting in a few keywords. So they'll be looking at keywords anywhere in the document. If you put in competitive intelligence and you don't put it in quotation marks, you'll find competitive separated by intelligence plus competitive intelligence plus intelligence competitive and all sorts of combinations. That's not a very smart search. If you're looking for competitive intelligence, put it in quotes, in quotation marks. So what do I mean by advanced search? That's at the most basic way. But what about narrowing things down? You want to look for a white paper. So look for words in the title. Consider your keywords, what the URL is. So what are you searching for? Are you searching for location? Look for maps. Or you might be looking for who links to somebody else. So what's the linking? Or a particular file. You might be looking for an Acrobat PDF file or an Excel document. The particular spreadsheet I was talking about was actually an Excel document contained in a PowerPoint file. So by searching for PowerPoint files, I happen to find that supplier list. You might be looking for things on geography. So pages that come from a particular site or particular region. Or what about wildcards, where you don't know all the words and you're just searching for some of them? Sites that link to a page. You might want to exclude certain words. So if I'm doing a search for information on lung cancer, do I search on pulmonary carcinoma or do I search on lung cancer? And am I then going to exclude certain other words? You might want to look at a set of sites, and not just one site, but a whole group of sites. And you might want to change the relevancy so that things are in date order, or you're weighting the search by a particular keyword. So there are a number of ways that you can select your searching and make it slightly smarter than just putting in the keywords in the search bar. And that's, in essence, what advanced search actually is. And we're going to look at some of these features in a second. The important thing to realize, though, is sometimes things aren't available. Sometimes you cannot find things. A real example which frustrated me yesterday, I was trying to find a particular video. I found pretty much every other video other than the one I wanted. The one I wanted is available, but couldn't be downloaded. And I wanted to take just a small bit of it for a different reason. And it can't be downloaded. It's been right protected. Every other one of that series was not. Just the one I wanted, of course, was, which is Sod's Law. So sometimes things can't be found or can't be obtained. And again, knowing when to stop and when you can't find it is another part of searching. So part of the problem is that over the years, the search engines have gotten much, much smarter. And people don't need to search using advanced search facilities in the way they used to in the days that Alta Vista, which is now gone, and the early search engines were operating. Things have changed. And now finding advanced search facilities can be very difficult. If you look at Google now and compare it even 2 or 3 years ago, there used to be a little line saying advanced search, and you just click on that and you'd get an advanced search box. Now you actively have to look for that advanced search page. On Google, you find it by clicking on the front page at the settings box, and you'll have a little thing for advanced search. Or the cogwheel where I've got my arrow on the right hand after you've done a search. It used to be that when you did your search, if you scroll down, you'd also have a link. So you'd have something like that, where the advanced search is there. It doesn't exist anymore. That's what you now get. So advanced search is essentially disappearing in pretty much all the search engines. You have to know where they are. In Bing, you won't find it. You actually have to do a search and then you have to click down. The reason for this is that advanced search has a real cost for the search engines. They have to index to a much greater degree than they would have done normally. And if people aren't using it, why maintain it? And Google and the other search engines for a number of times have actually written, we're not going to continue with that particular facility or that search option because nobody's using it, or hardly anybody's using it. It might be under 1% of all their users will be using these facilities. So unless there's a reason for the Google engineers to keep it, they will kill it. And also, as search becomes more accurate for the average user, and the search engines aren't built for competitive intelligence professionals, they're not built for advanced searchers, they're built for the average searcher, and the aim is to make money. So only a small minority use them, they'll kill it. The thing to remember that the search engines make their money from advertising. They don't really make their money from advanced searchers who are trying to find things for work. They make their money from people who they can collect information from in the sense of their usage patterns and then sell it to their advertisers. One way of viewing yourself as a searcher, if something is free, there's a reason it's free. And in this case, the reason it's free is you are not a customer of Google, you are a product of Google. And if you view it like that, you can often understand why advanced search disappears. So let's look at some of these features. This is the Google Advanced Search box, but it doesn't contain everything. So the first thing you can look at is all these words. And at the very end, I'm going to give a link to the advanced search facilities for all the search engines. So you can look for a phrase or an exact word. You can look for a selection of words. So in other words, something like or, so competitive or intelligence. You can exclude words. A nice feature is you can look for numbers. So you can look for things between 2010 and 2012. You can specify language, which is worth doing, because if I'm searching for something in Germany, searching in English is not going to do me much good. Search in German. You don't have to speak German. Just use Google Translate or translate.google.com. Find out what the German or the French or the Hindi or the Chinese name is. Put that in as your search and then translate it back. So there are a number of things to search on, and this is the advanced search page, but there's a lot more. And it's worth knowing some of these keywords. The other thing is that there's not just Google, the regular Google, there's also Google Patent Search, Google Scholar, and there are slight differences for each of these, and it's worth looking at that. These are the keywords that I use most. I'll use in title for searching for my terms in the title of the page I'm looking at. All in title says all the words have to be in the title. And generally speaking, certainly if you use in title, there should be no space between your search term and the word in title. So it's in title : search term. Or you might look for in URL. So competitiveintelligence.com, I could do in URL competitive -intelligence, and it will find that. I could do all in URL, competitive and intelligence together. Probably the most important is file type, Because with file type, you can say, I want to look for PowerPoint files. I want to look for PDFs. And as a search, it makes it much, much easier to say, I'm going to just find a PDF. I don't want anything else. You can look for related, not used that often, but can be helpful. If you don't really know what you're looking for, you'll find sites that Google thinks are similar. But the important point is it's Google thinks it's similar, not anybody else. Link will look for pages that link to that page, not link to the site. And it's important to recognize that on Google, it's linking to a page. So if you've got things linked to index.html, it won't look to index at my page, also mypage.html. That's different. It means that on Google, the link operator isn't that useful, but it can be used for some things if you're looking for a specific page. There used to be a very useful thing called link domain on Yahoo, but Yahoo now links to Bing, and Bing didn't have that, so it's gone. It disappeared about 2 to 3 years ago. Another one that some people may know is a synonym operator. It was a little squirrely tilde character. Why is that gone? Well, Google said, yes, it's been deprecated. Why? Because too few people were using it to make it worth the time, money, and energy to maintain. Google also said we do this automatically anyway. The problem is that it means that finding stuff can become harder, because what used to be possible is you used to be able to use the synonym operator and then exclude certain keywords that you know were synonyms. You can't do that any longer. It doesn't work. Another feature that's gone, you used to be able to get instant previews. You'd be able to sort of see what the page looked like before you even got there. And Google has said, we've had to remove certain features, such as instant previews. Instant previews saw very low usage by our users. And that's typical. One of the interesting ones that has remained, though, is the word is around. I do not recommend around. It sort of works on google.com. It doesn't really work in the regional Googles like google.co.uk, google.fr, google.de, and so on. Instead, use the wildcard, which is an asterisk. So I could say competitive asterisk intelligence, and I'll get competitive and marketing intelligence, competitive technical intelligence, competitive primary research intelligence, and all sorts of options in between. Around is supposed to do that, where you'd say competitive around 3 intelligence, and you'll get things with 3 words between the two, but it really doesn't work. So try it, but you won't like it, or I'd be surprised if you do like it, and if you do, let me know. Or gives you, as it says, competitive or intelligence, which is not a very intelligent search, and the vertical line is equivalent to or. Minus is the same as not, and you can use ... for a number range. There are a few others. In text, I've not gone through. In text, if you want the word as typed to appear in the page, and there are other ways of doing that as well. On Bing, there are other search operators. So this is the Google ones, and as that's what most people are using, the other ones I'm sort of focusing on. The asterisk does not work on Bing. The link is slightly different. And Bing has a number of other operators as well that are worth looking at. So this is how you might get a search. You put in title, so I'm saying in title, competitive asterisk intelligence. I want that to be in the title. It's not actually a very good search because the asterisk tends to ignore the in title, but it's worth trying. Site abcd.com says I want it to be on that site, and I want it to be an Acrobat file. So again, that's the way that you might search. So I'm now going to look at Google versus some of the other key terms and what's available on each of these key search terms. And then I'm going to look at some actual examples. We'll actually sort of look at some Google searching. And if people want examples for me to do a search, I'll give you, we'll try it out if it's time. It's a bit risky doing this live, but let's go with it. So sometimes some of you will have received emails saying, register your website with 1,000 search engines or 10,000 search engines or whatever. even 200 search engines. That is rubbish. There aren't 200 search engines that are worth even considering. If you asked me to name 10 search engines, I'd be hard pushed now, because Yahoo is essentially the same as Bing. Ask is the same as Bing. So, no, Ask is the same as Google. Alta Vista doesn't exist any longer, but it was bought by Yahoo. There are a few directories, but the trouble with directories is some of them, if you're in them, it can even mean the search engines feel that you're spamming. Spamming in a search engine terms means you're trying to cheat the search engine, trying to come to the top when you're not relevant to the search, and as a result, you're likely to be pushed down. So you do not want to spam with your website. The main search engines that I use, not even all of these, Google is my default search engine, but if I don't find something quickly on Google, I'll use some of the others. And for some searches, I'll go straight to some of the others, and I'll say what the differences are in a second. The other thing is when you do a search, go to the preferences and change your preferences. So instead of getting 10 results, you get 100 results. It will, or 50 results on Bing. It'll make your search much, much better on Google if you can see 100 results all in one go. And you find that by looking at preferences and changing your search settings. So you have Google, then you have Bing. Bing is owned by Microsoft. Some of you might know it as Live or MSN Search, but they changed it to Bing, and Bing is a much more attractive search engine than those anyway. You have Bleco. Bleco is one of the smaller ones. It's not as good as it used to be because they're trying to get attention. And it used to have some very powerful search features, which unfortunately have gone, known as slash tags, where you can actually weight your search by certain terms. The idea being that you could do a search on Bleco, and if you're looking for political information, you'd find right-wing information in preference to left-wing, or vice versa. Bleco also tries to say they don't track or keep your searches. So if you're looking for things you don't want to be anyone to know that you're searching, Bleco's the one to go, or one of the ones to go for. If you really do not want to be tracked, DuckDuckGo is really the search engine to use. DuckDuckGo is also the only search engine that actually openly says they have a version for the Tor browser. If you're not sure what the Tor browser is, don't worry, but it's the one where if you want to find a hitman or illegal drugs or anything that you really shouldn't be looking for, the Tor browser is where you're allowed to, you can find it. And DuckDuckGo has a version operating on the Tor browser. It's not easy to use. It's what Edward Snowden was essentially saying, if you don't want to be tracked, because of course everybody's tracking everybody, that's the way to go about without being tracked. And now to the more interesting ones. Gigablast is a lost opportunity. It's supposed to be an open source browser. In other words, anyone can edit it, anyone can update it. It's a bit like Firefox. There's a team of people. It isn't owned by anybody. So there was an opportunity there, but it was never really maintained, so it doesn't really do very much. There's not much you'll find on Gigablast that you won't find anywhere else. If you are searching in Chinese or in China and you're looking for Chinese material, Baidu is the search engine to go for. Baidu is the third largest search engine in the world, but it's almost totally Chinese because it has a dominant share in China, and China is the biggest internet using country in the world. Yandex is for, well, I would have said Russia and Ukraine together, but I'm not sure that's particularly opportune at the moment. But Yandex will search both Russia, will search for Russia, Ukraine, and it's the main search engines in Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, or Belarus, I think Kazakhstan, and places that use Slavic characters. Yandex wants to move out of the Russian domain or the Slavic domain. They've actually invested in Bleco. So they're trying to send and becoming more important globally. So don't ignore Yandex. It's there, and you may hear more of it in the future in one way or another, certainly if they start acquiring companies like Bleco, because they've got some very interesting search features. So I'm now going to look through what some of these search features are. All of them, if you put your key terms in quotes, it will search for a phrase. All of them, other than Bleco, allow you to search in the title of the web page. But not all of them have the same syntax. So Yandex has slightly different syntax, and Gigablast has slightly different syntax to everybody else. And after this, I'm going to give you the web pages for each of these advanced search features so you can see for them yourselves. But everybody else, if you do Untitled : you'll search in the title. Only really Google, Baidu, Yandex, and Gigablast have in URL. A very, very useful search feature. If you're looking for a white paper, often the white paper, the topic will be in the URL. So in URL : is another good search term to use. What about you're looking for an exact match? So you're looking for something that's there. One of the things about search engines, the modern search engines, if you go to the history of search engines, the way search engines originally worked is they searched on the page only. If a word wasn't on the page, it wouldn't be in the index. Along came Google and said links to other pages are important. And sometimes you'll be able to do a search and the words you're looking for will not even be on the page, but they are in a link to that page. So the page has something to do with that. If you're searching for something where it's in that page, on Google in text will work, in body on Bing and DuckDuckGo, and on Yandex, and we'll look at Yandex in a second on some of the advanced search features there, it's slightly different. Site everywhere, file type everywhere, but again on Yandex it's a slightly different term. Instead of file type, it's MIME. Everybody has the word exclude, again Yandex is different. Other than Bleco, all of them have the Boolean OR. Not all have date searching, and most of them don't have related. The most interesting is the proximity operator, where you're searching, as I said, competitive and intelligence are connected by, let's say, a certain number of words. And Google has that with the asterisk and sort of with the around. Bing has it with a near, and Yandex really does have it. And I'll show you the Yandex operators in a second so you can see what's there. Oh, yes, Yandex agreed, somebody's pointed out Yandex has an agreement with Facebook and can index it now. So can Bing. Pretty much anybody who wants to get access to Facebook other than Google will be allowed to. Of course, Facebook doesn't like Google. So what's different? I said what's the same. Well, Google has unique search options and filters that nobody else has, like numeric search. You can search for specific material. You can search for blog posts. There's Google Scholar for searching academics, Google Books, patents. And they all have slightly different options, so it's worth looking at that. Bing also has a Google Scholar type approach with Bing's academics search, and that's also worth looking at. It's different to Google Scholar. Bing's operators are also very different. They've got common ones, but you can look for IP address. You can look for RSS feeds. You can say, I want something that contains an MP3 file. So if you're looking to download the latest music record or song that you like, Bing is going to be better than Google. Bleco's strong point is eliminating what they call content farm. Content farm spam is stuff like WikiHow, put up to try and really spam the search engines, really get there, and doesn't really have much relevance. It's stuff that's scraped from other sites. Now, Google is now actively trying to do that as well, in that they're saying that if a site scrapes, in other words, steals stuff from another site, and Google picks that up, then the site itself will be downgraded. So the aim is to make sure that everything on Google is native to that site and not stolen from another site. Bleco was the first to do that, and in some ways is more sophisticated than Google. It's a very new feature on Google where they actively say we're not going to do that. DuckDuckGo, as I said, focuses on privacy, and that link at the bottom is for the Tor deep web searching, if you want to do it. The other thing on DuckDuckGo is what they call their bang commands. So I can put in, for instance, Phil Bradley, a colleague of mine, !Amazon, and it will search for Phil Bradley on Amazon. So I can use DuckDuckGo and search other things. Or I could do !Google, and it will search Google. Why you'd want to use DuckDuckGo to search Google, the only reason is privacy. And then there's Baidu for Chinese pages, Yandex for the Slavic languages. It also does English and French, although I think they might have downgraded the French search recently. Last time I looked, it wasn't there, but it was there before. Gigablast. A really interesting one is Million Short. It uses Bing, but it gets rid of the most popular sites like about.com, Wikipedia, and all the big sites. And the reason you want to do that is you're looking for hard-to-find information that isn't in Wikipedia, isn't in about.com, isn't on eBay. And if you're doing competitive intelligence, maybe that's what you should be doing. Wolfram Alpha is not a search engine, although some people call it that. It's a knowledge engine. But the nice thing is it gives you results in a tabular format and a niche format. So if you're doing a quick search, somebody asks you to find the stock price of IBM. You can do that very quickly on Wolfram Alpha. And you'll get a table showing that. Zanran will give you what they call semi-structured search. It's only now in English. It doesn't work yet in any other language. They have some patented techniques that search for tables, that search for graphs, and Zanran will allow you to find those instantly. It's a fabulous search tool for things like that, and I recommend you to try it. I said I'd finish off with links to each of the help pages of the main search engines, and you'll find them here. DuckDuckGo has some shorter forms like DuckGo, and it's worth reading some of these. Some of them are quite complicated, and sometimes they actually change. So, for instance, the Google one keeps on changing. In 6 months' time, it'll probably be different, and you just have to search for it. So that's basically me for now. But before we go and have any questions, I'm going to just have a look and show you live what some of these are, and then we'll move on. So I'm going to look at Yandex first, and that's what Yandex looks like. And then here's their advanced search page. And you can see the sort of languages you've got. You've got English, French, German, and then essentially the Slavic languages. And again, you can search for different formats. SWF is essentially, you're looking for types of video and documents per page, so it's worth looking at. But the interesting thing about Yandex is their operator crib sheet. And you've got here, drink me. But here you've got a missing word in a quote. So they've got an asterisk in a slightly different way. Words appearing in the same sentence. Nobody else does that. Words appearing on the same web page. Well, that's effectively looking at I mean, everyone does that in one way or another, but this is a way of saying, I don't want just a link. So it's a bit like the in-text feature on Google. Specific word. Here it's equivalent to the or, but here you're looking for ranking. So when you've got the double chevron, that's a ranking. And here you've got the distance, so you have tarts within 2 words of stole, or within 3 sentences. And that is what makes Yandex unique, because it has more search features than anybody else. Baidu, if you're not familiar with Baidu, always, if you're using Google Chrome and you don't know the language, switch on the translation so you can see it in English. So you can see news website posted it. But that's not what Baidu really looks like. This is what Baidu really looks like. This is what DuckDuckGo looks like. This is Google's advanced search. And one thing I haven't mentioned if you're looking at advanced search, all the search engines filter based on your previous record or previous search history. That means if you've searched a lot on a specific term, then Google knows you like that term and will give you more of what it thinks you like. From a competitive intelligence perspective, that's useless, because if you work for IBM, Google probably knows you work for IBM, so it's going to give you information relevant to IBM, and is not going to give you information relevant necessarily to the competitors. And to give you an example of how that could work, this is a search and how to overcome that. Now, of course, using other search engines is one way of overcoming it, but even on Google, if you go into the incognito search, for instance, on Chrome, or the equivalent to incognito search on Firefox or Internet Explorer, here's what happens. This is a search on Iran and nuclear. And if you notice the first few, and it's not a great search, I didn't want to do the searches I do regularly because that would probably give too much away. But I'm going to now bring up Iran nuclear using incognito search on Chrome. And you can see the little spy in the background there. But let's have a look. And you can see straight away there are slight differences. You've got an Israeli article is the second link after the news, but where is it here? It's further down. So you've got a different search order. And that's quite typical. So if you're not sure, it's always worth searching using incognito search, and you might get different results. Sometimes you can get very different results. Certainly if you go further down, you might get different results. And here is, by the way, the example of preferences. Notice how it's scrolling down and down and down and down and down and so on. Because I have my preferences set up so that instead of getting the default 10 like here, it just goes on and I get 100. The other thing you might have noticed is I've got a number of tweets related to that area. And that's something you can do with a plugin on Google Chrome, so that you can be searching Twitter at the same time as you're doing a regular search. And it's a very useful feature. This is Bing, and this is the advanced search on Bing, where I did a search and then I click on that and I get the options. So that's what you get there, and you click on advanced search and you get that. This is Bleco, and here I did a search Crimean War. And you can see the Crimea has been in the history quite often. And what you get is top results, latest news, quick answers, and it gives you various categories, or I can select my categories. So I've got Crimean War Liberal and I get certain views, or Crimean War History and I get completely different views. Wolfram Alpha, that's what it looks like if you don't know, but I said that Wolfram Alpha can be quite useful. And this is a search on Wolfram Alpha on stock IBM. So I've got IBM, I've got the latest trade, I've got their market capitalization, little share graph, and so on. So if somebody says, give me the latest information on a company, if it's a publicly quoted company, Wolfram Alpha might be the way of doing something very, very quickly. The problem is you don't always know where the information comes from and how reliable it is. And I'll finish off with Gigablast and then take any questions. And that's what Gigablast looks like. And as I said, it's open source. Okay, we've had a question. What do I think of meta search engines? For competitor, it's a very, very good question. I feel like saying, are there any people working for meta search engine on this webinar? Because I don't want to upset them and be rude. But I feel sometimes I probably ought to. Most of the meta search engines are essentially parasites. View it like this. You are a search engine like Google, like Bing, and you've spent a lot of money building your search facilities, your search algorithms. You spent a lot of money indexing everything. And along comes a meta search engine and links into you and does a search on you, but you don't get paid for the advertising. The advertising is what pays for all your development, but you don't get that advertising. The meta search engine does. So from the point of view of a search engine, most meta search engines are problems. They steal the advertising or divert from the revenue sources for the search engine. Having said that, they can sometimes give you a view that you might not get from the main search engines. The part of the reason is the search engines will block the meta search, and sometimes completely. I'm not certain, but I don't think any meta search engine uses Google totally. They don't really. Google pretty much blocks the meta search engines from accessing them. And that means you're not searching Google if you're using a meta search engine. That can be good in some ways as you get a different view. But even the other search engines, the big search engines, will limit the amount of time that a search engine can access the meta search engine. So you're getting, in a sense, poorer results. And you also have the limited search features, so you don't have the same search options that you would with a search engine. They're much less customizable. But if you're desperate, certainly things like web-fetched, Dogpile are worth looking at. And some of the search engines like Bleco, DuckDuckGo will bring in Google results. Somebody mentioned that Bleco will bring in, Bleco will bring in Yandex results as well, and vice versa. So there are links between search engines, but they do their own things and then they share and they partner with others. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As I said, Bing and Yahoo are partnered together. But a typical traditional meta search engine is parasitical. Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Arthur. It's me again. Very nice. Here's another question coming up. You talked about consolidation in the search engine industry. Could you comment on what you can predict as a future? So who will survive? How will the landscape be like 5 years down the road?
Great question. One of the big things in search is the idea of semantic search. I said that advanced search is disappearing. Part of the reason advanced search is disappearing is because search engines like Google are becoming cleverer. They're putting a lot of work into semantic search. They're putting a lot of work into interpreting what people want. Now, part of the way they do that is by knowing who you are. So when you do a search on Google and you're signed into Google, it knows pretty much everything you've done. It tracks where you've been. It tracks the websites you're going to. And that is going to increase. So the search engines will be much, much cleverer at knowing what you're looking for. It means that if you're the average user, it will know pretty much what you want to do. They're getting sufficiently clever. There's some recent work that's gone out on Google, or talking about Google, that Google actually starting to anticipate what you're likely to search. Certainly going towards mobile, and one of the things that I think people like Bleco and Yahoo are really pushing is the mobile searching. But if you go on to Google, and I think Google now, so their mobile searching, I can put in who is the son of the Queen of England? And that will come Prince Charles. Who is Prince Charles' eldest son? And that will come Prince William. Who is he married to? It knows I'm talking about Prince William. I don't have to put in the words Prince William. And it will say Kate Middleton. or I'm not sure quite what it say. It will say Kate or something like that, or Catherine. What is their son called? And it will say George. So the search engines are becoming sufficiently clever that they know that you're doing link searching. They know what you've done before. It'll be easier to put in natural language searching. All of that is probably not good for the competitive intelligence professional, because you're going to have to think much more, how can I get what I want to find for my client, and that client could be internal or external, rather than what was I searching yesterday or the day before that has no relevance to what I'm searching today. I'm sure there will be ways of overcoming that, but you might have to think in different ways of doing it. So that's one way that search is going to be changing. Another way that I think search is going to be changing is that more search engines will disappear. In the last few years, we've lost Alta Vista, but then nobody was using Alta Vista anyway. It was essentially Yahoo. But Yauba, which everyone said, oh, that's the most popular search engine in Iran, because Yauba was one of the first search engines to offer privacy search. Yauba has now sort of gone. Let's just bring it up, because it's still there, but it doesn't do anything. This is going to come on. It's taking its time. Another one that's gone, there was a great search engine for concept searching called Car2. That's gone. Hakia, which promised to be the first semantic search engine, doesn't exist any longer. So a lot of the smaller search engines essentially have become discontinued. It looks as though Yauba also isn't working any longer. It certainly was about 6 months. Didn't do anything. It just had a front page saying, we're not doing anything any longer. Watch us. But here's another one. This is for deep web searching. Skyrus was a fantastic search tool supported by Elsevier for searching for scientific and technical material. It was free, and if you were trying to do a deep web search for scientific or technical material, Cyrus was probably one of the best tools to use other than the main search engine. Certainly it was one that I used all the time, but as you can see, it's gone. In January, they discontinued it. Search engines are expensive to maintain, they're expensive to develop, they're expensive to enhance. And as the technology becomes more complicated and the web becomes bigger, there's no point having a search engine that only indexes now 1 billion pages. That used to be the thing that people used to go for, how many billions of pages. Now it really is so big, you need massive, massive data centers to offer anything realistic. And that means money. So if you haven't got the money or you're not getting an income from it, it's going to be discontinued. So if we look at search engines, and if we look at some of the ones that I was talking about, will GigaPlast continue? It's open source, but it'll become even more inconsequential and nobody will even know it exists, or hardly anyone except for a few hobbyists. Baidu will still be there. Leco, DuckDuckGo, I don't know if they're making money. Certainly until some point they probably won't. Bing, Google, because of who's behind them, will continue, but probably not quite in the same way. And Bing wants to beat Google and vice versa, so that will continue things going. So I'd like to say DuckDuckGo will go, but essentially it's a one-man job. I'm trying to remember what his name is, but it's, you know, it's really only one man. Some of the deep web sources, there's Biznar and there's Mednar for searching business sources and medical sources, and it's one person. a guy in, I think, California called Abe Liederman or something like that. And it's his baby and his team. If he doesn't have the money, he's not going to continue. It's a hobby. So, a couple of questions. How much of the internet is covered by Google? Not very much. There's been nothing recent, but in about 2001, or might have been 2000, there was a research paper in Nature that said that none of the search engines covered more than 30% of the web. Part of the reason is because a lot of the webs now are databases. You've got content management systems, and the search engines cannot index stuff that doesn't have links pointing to it or are too big. No search engine indexes the whole of PubMed. If you want to search PubMed, which sort of gets to the idea of scientific technical search, so PubMed is a thing for searching medical type data. You go to PubMed and search PubMed's only search source, own search tools. You don't search it with Google because you're going to miss such stuff. Google Scholar, Microsoft Academic, both can be used for technical scientific research. Mednar, again, for medical research. I would have said Skyrus for scientific technical, but as that's gone, you've got things like Mendeley for document search, but it's not really a search engine, it's slightly more technical, and you have the pay-to-use sources, and I would always recommend pay-to-use sources. Never ever ignore the pay-to-use sources. Online database, small private companies, oops, let's bring that up again. Small private companies, never easy. The key thing to remember for any search is, why is information made available? Why will a small private company want to make its information available? It'll have a web page, so find their web page. If it's not on their web page, what are they in the company registration offices? So you'll find their finances in Europe anyway, so not in the US, not in jurisdictions like India, I don't think in Russia. But in a lot of Europe, by law, small private companies have to file their accounts. So pay for that information, buy it. There may be case studies. So look at the name of the company and put in the word case study or case or example. So think of what you're looking for and you'll find names. I sometimes find a lot of information from suppliers to a company where they'll mention their key suppliers, their key customers. Customers may refer to a company. So you can find information, but ultimately if it's a small private company, that's where the primary research bit really comes in as well. And I think there's one more question about comparing search engines to online databases. Pay for information. If you're looking for news, go through Dialog, LexisNexis, Factiva. That's what their job is. Their job is to index. Factiva indexes, tens of thousands of pages going back 30 years. So does Dialog. So does LexisNexis. Google News doesn't index everything and certainly won't go back 20 years except for the key pages or the key news stories. On the other hand, Google does have a plan to try and index most major news stories from the past. So you might be able to see what the newspapers used to look like 50 years ago and see a headline news. But beyond that, you won't get very much. If you're a competitive intelligence professional, you should have a budget. And if you've got a budget, one of the things you're going to spend it on is possibly outsourcing primary research. Another thing you're going to be spending it on, or should be spending it on, is paying for information from online databases like the ones I've mentioned. And there are lots and lots of others. If you're in defense, you should be subscribing to Jane's or Forecast International. And the other thing you should be using your budget for, of course, is for training. And as I'm sure Rainer is going to be mentioning a bit about some of the training options for ICI and forthcoming ones, and one of the ones is going to be taking place in London in a couple of weeks' time, where what I've covered today is just a subset. It's a 2-day workshop looking at how to find information using secondary sources, techniques for identifying what's likely to be available, techniques for identifying the sort of keywords you should be using, working out where to search, and we'll go through a number of exercises with some hard to find material, seeing whether you can find it. And it's not, some of the searches are not easy. You can't do it in one go, you have to do 3 or 4 searches. People come out and think, wow, I found that. And so, probably 1 every 2 courses I've done, people have actually said halfway through, can I please phone my boss? We've been looking for this for ages and we've now found it. So if you know how to search, that's one of the reasons why it's worth learning.
Albert, thank you very much for handing over. Here's another final question. I think then we're really in a 1 hour spot already. And this is, can you recommend other engines doing technical scientific research?
Well, that's why I mentioned Google Scholar. That's why I mentioned Google Academic. Sorry, Microsoft Academic. But those are free. If you are doing scientific technical research, you are probably working for a reasonably large organization. You have a budget. Spend it on searches like Dialog, searches on, there's Questel, there's STN. There are a number of technical scientific research pay-to-use databases, and they're going to be a lot better than anything you'll find on the search engines, because that's what they're supposed to do. Just as an example, you can do a patent search on Google. Google has a dedicated patent search, but essentially all you're searching is the patent itself. On the other hand, if you use Derwent Patent, the Derwent World Patent Index, which is on the Dialog on STM, it's sort of Thomson's scientific type database, you are searching a database that has indexed every single patent, not just in one jurisdiction, but in all the main patent jurisdictions. I think it's about 40. And it's indexed the content of that patent. And it's translated, if it's a Chinese patent, it's translated that content into English and indexed that content. So as an example, you're looking for a chemical structure. Has this been patented? You can do that through the Derwent World Patent Index, because they have an index of different patent structures. So has it got a methane group on it, or a methyl group on it? There is an index for that. So you can pretty much say, I want something that has a benzene ring with a methyl attached to it, which has this, this, and this, and this, and you can search on it. You cannot do that in any search engine. If you're looking for things like that, there's also search things like ChemSpider, if you're looking for chemical structures. So there are a number of different free sources for technical scientific research. But for anything serious, I would strongly recommend paying. If you're doing a quick search, then, as I said, there's ChemSpider, there's Mednar, there's PubMed, there's Google Scholar, there's Microsoft Academic. So there are a number of, let's check and see if anything's there. But if you want to make sure that there's something there, it's about the only way is to pay for it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Arthur. It's been a very interesting hour. As you mentioned already, there is more of Arthur coming up. You mentioned a 2 days workshop in London. That's March 17th to 18th. So if you're interested, drop a line and we will definitely send you some more material on that. Our next ICI live webinar, and I have to apologize for the echo in the line. Sorry about that. That will be in a month's time, April 3rd, with Ken Potter from the US. Talking about human intelligence as in primary research, finding competitive intelligence related information from human sources. And you see a lot of, in the bottom part of this slide, information about Arthur. I'm sure he's willing to answer questions, take on some more of your specific needs, and then simply contact him, and I'm sure you'll get something out of that as well. So, Arthur, thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and thank you everybody for attending. Have a nice day wherever you are, and enjoy whatever you can do now with the search engine technology. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.